This is Newsfile. It's live on Joy 99.7 FM. It's live on the Joy News channel on Multi TV. Let me introduce my guest joining us for this morning's show. Joining me is Kuku Kwating. He's a member of the Finance Committee. He's a man tipped to become our next Deputy Finance Minister. He knows a thing or two about the budget that is yet to come next week. He knows a thing or two about what went to the present framing of the economic issues in the State of the Nation address, and so we invited him to join us. Thank you, Kweku. Also joining us is a man it's been a while since he was last year, Mr. Kofi Bentil. He is a private legal practitioner. He is, the Vice President of Money?
Yes.
The think tank. He's joining us to have a conversation on the key issues. And of course, Kweku Bako Jr., Abdul Malik Kweku Bako Jr. is also here. In fact, as you can come up upon and you see him scrolling through his documents, set to roll on all the important issues. We're expecting, of course, a rep from the NDC to join us very shortly as we begin to have our conversation on all the key important subjects of national interest. So without much ado, and we'll start with the preliminary issue of the Mr. Opuni's predicament. He's been under the radar quite a bit recently because of some actions that the EOCO has instituted against him recently. I want to read to you a letter that we intercepted, altered by the Economic and Organized Crime Office to his bank, freezing his assets. And it says I'm not going to tell you which bank it is. I'm not going to read the bank account details, but I'm just going to read the essence of what the letter said. And this is signed by the Acting Executive Director of the Economic and Organized Crime Office. Please take note that pursuant to authority conferred on the Acting Executive Director by Section 33 of the Economic and Organized Crime Office Act 2010, Act 804, the Acting Executive Director of the Economic and Organized Crime Office has directed the freezing of the bank account of Opuni Stephen Kwabena. Then it goes on to state the bank account detail. With your bank, pending investigations into suspected serious offenses, this order takes immediate effect. Until this order is revoked or lapses, your bank shall not allow any transaction on the account without the written authority of the Executive Director, except in case of the following: deposit credits into the account, including but not limited to cash transfers from other sources, interest, if any, deposits credits resulting from the encashment of financial instruments such as treasury bills, bond shares, bills of exchange, etc., in addition to financial assets from other sources. Further, in pursuance of investigations, you are requested to cooperate and to furnish the Acting Executive Director of the Economic and Organized Crime Office with the following: account opening documents, statement of account since the account was opened to date, copies of checks drawn on the account for the same period, SWIFT messages, transfers into the account. Please be advised accordingly. And signed by the Acting Executive Director, Economic and Organized Crime Office, of course, to Ms. Opuni's bank. Kofi, how does it strike you? I mean, we heard the rumor started a few weeks ago when we heard that, first of all, he was asked to vacate his post. And then we even heard that he's been picked up for questioning. He was questioned with his lawyers. Now his bank account has been frozen. What we haven't been told in quite some detail is, what has he done wrong? What is he being investigated for? You can guess that it has to do with something around economic and organized crime, because EOCO is investigating it. What's your reading of what is happening?
It looks to me like due process. All right. I mean, nobody wants to be in that situation, but I am actually happy that we are not hearing so many, comments on he's done this and he's done that. I am happy with the silence. I am happy with the lack of information concerning Mr. Opuni. I am happy with the fact that, EOCO has gone in, they are doing what they have to do, all of us have heard all kinds of things about, he's done this, he's given these contracts and that. Those things, let them be media commentary, etc. But the security agencies, just like we complained in the case of the vehicles, should not be part of the media banter. They should be seen to be putting their noses down and doing things according to law. So I like this arrangement, I like this process, I like the way this one is going. When it's done and we are sure, now they can come out and talk. And let Opuni also have his time to defend himself. So I like this approach, and I think if we all go along this way, we'll get better sanity.
It's important you raise that point. And just watching and observing, it appears this current government, and that's why the president has been constantly referring to the Independent Prosecutor's Office. It appears that because that office is not ready, but it appears this is pretty urgent, has to be dealt with quite quickly, he still wants to use the institutions of state and gives him this, call it what, plausible denial, but I'm not involved in this. The state is dealing with this, and so, and strangely enough, if you listen to the room, the whispering, the NDC guys, even publicly, seem to be happy with what is happening to Opuni. It's strange times.
Nobody is happy about that, but you see, they don't have cause to complain. Right, because this is due process, okay? So again, the reason why this is going on a different keel, there's not so much noise around it, is because the powers that be are organizing themselves properly and according to law. The reason why you're not hearing a blowback from the NDC is because this is being done properly. Okay, and I hope everything will be done like this. Look, we have about 15 different institutions of state, that SFO, EOCO, in the police itself, there are all kinds of different units. In fact, after looking at it critically, I think that EOCO can be transformed into the Special Prosecutor's Office because everything is there. Okay, point I'm making is
that eventually has to go to the AG.
Well, no, you see, the thing about the whole Special Prosecutor thing is the power to independently prosecute, which is only vested in the AG.
But the EOCO hasn't got that now.
EOCO hasn't got that. EOCO's powers are coming from the AG. The thing is to separate them so that nobody can interfere. My point is, as of now, until that constitutional, provision is changed and made independent, that is the prosecutor made independent, EOCO is as good as we can get. The point I'm making is that there are enough state institutions to investigate, to ascertain, to determine, to do all the things that need to be done, whether it's vehicles or houses or whatever. And in this particular case, you are seeing them put to work. I hope this will be the trend. I hope things will proceed along this way. And you realize that nobody will have any cause to complain. The NDC is not complaining because it's been done properly. This is how it ought to be done.
What's your take on this? I mean, you are very close to the government. What have you heard that we haven't heard?
Nothing that you probably haven't heard. And I can only associate myself with the point that Kofi has made, that it's important that these processes go on. And I think that this is not just going to be with COCOBOD. I'm sure other institutions would also come under scrutiny. The important thing is that as we seek to correct some of the wrongs that have happened, that it will be done in accordance with law. And so far, I think we have reason to believe that that will happen. I mean, nobody knows for sure whether Mr. Opuni has done some wrong things. But if us, I think EOCO and those parts of government that directly relate to this would imagine, if things have been done wrongly and they want to get to the bottom of it, the chief executive, the man who presided over all that, is definitely a good person to talk to. We hear they're talking to him. If they have frozen his assets, I would imagine that it is just a temporary action, and that if investigations indicate that he has no questions to answer, definitely he will have his assets restored to him. So I have no further information, and I think that it is good for the people even in this administration to see that what this government believes in is that if you if wrong things happen, they will be investigated. That's the reason I personally want to see more of these things happen in respect of the other departments of government, so that not only would people know that if you do the wrong things, I'm not suggesting Mr. Opuni has done anything wrong, but if wrong things happen in some government departments, if your own government doesn't come after you, that a future government could come after you. But more importantly, that if this is the posture of the new Nanado administration, then you, the person in Nanado's government, also has to be careful, because you never know, if you did the wrong things tomorrow, it might be you at the EOCO. So I welcome what is happening. I have reason to believe that due process would continue, and then in the end, this country would be the net gainer.
Yeah. And as we talk about the Opuni issue, really, it dates back to many months and years. In fact, I'm just trying to pull up the union, for example, the union for that particular sector had already dragged him to court on some of the key issues. And they had, for example, petitioned the former minister, asking him to sort of remove it. I know there were protests that had gone on, you know, to try and get him to go, because there's so many allegations were swirling around his administration about, you know, alleged monies being misapplied, etc., etc. Lots of money we are talking about, and this, I'm told, some part of the case is already in court. And so I guess you can sense the urgency in trying to get to the bottom of this very, very quickly, because there's a sense that the previous government lost the opportunity when the labor unions came before them and said, in fact, they actually brought evidence. I remember very well, they held a press conference addressed by the chairman of the general, of the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union, Solomon Kote, brought evidence. You know, they believed that it was enough for the government at least to issue some form of probe into it. Nothing happened. Now, of course, we're seeing the action being rolled out, led by the Organized Economic and Organized Crime Unit. We've just been joined by Kweku Ricketts-Hagan. He is the MP for Cape Coast South. He's also the former Deputy Finance Minister and former Trade and Industry Minister. Knows a thing or two about the finance and trade industry quite well, and so he'll help us when we start delving into the issues of the state of the nation and as we look ahead to the budget the coming week. But Mr. Ricketts-Hagan, just on this preliminary comments on the COCOBOD situation with Mr. Opuni. His accounts have been frozen. We know he's been investigated, been invited for questioning several times. Just go back to what I was just raising earlier. You were the NDC administration. You are elected to these things by the union, the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union, the Cocoa Industry Workers Union, elected you. They brought evidence, and they asked that, they actually submitted a petition to the sector minister and say, investigate this gentleman, because what he's doing there is some of them are illegal. Why didn't you at least probe it and find out whether the allegations against him that the workers' unions had, brought to your attention were even true? But nothing happened. What we had rather was defense of Mr. Opuni.
Thank you very much, and good morning to your listeners and viewers. Well, I'm not sure whether we know for sure that nothing was actually done, and so I don't want to jump into that kind of conclusion. But it's just unfortunate that something like that should happen. I mean, they say that you are not guilty until you're actually proven guilty. So the fact that someone has submitted some evidence does not necessarily mean that the person is guilty. I mean, evidence can be submitted in many forms for many reasons. So yeah, the right thing is to investigate. But in terms of whether the minister did or did not do anything, I mean, the probing could take many forms. I mean, it could be done, internally, it could be done, but the unfortunate thing is, when you go ahead and freeze people's asset without actually, because someone has made an allegation. I mean, EOCO must have a good reason why they have, frozen Dr. Opuni's asset. If not, I would think that, you know, you need to have a good reason, because it is very easy to, you know, destroy one's character by certain actions. And clearly, if in the end they have to, you know, give him back his asset, some damage, you know, could have been done already. The way we do things in this country, sometimes it's quite, you know, difficult for me to really.
But don't you think this is due process? That the state institution has begun, he's been invited several times before the freezing of the assets. Isn't this due process?
That is what I'm saying. I'm not actually in a position to tell at what stage, you know, yes, due process, but at what stage do you freeze someone's asset? Unless you have a good reason, you know, unless you have seen the asset itself, or if it's a bank account, you have seen the size of the bank account and you think that, you know, it is simply not, you know, you can't reconcile it with maybe what he does and how he came by that money. But just, I don't think it should just be a due process that when you are being investigated, your account should be frozen. It has to be a good reason why your account. And as I said, I don't have that information. You know, I mean, EOCO, I believe they know what they are doing. I believe they have a reason why they have done that. But, you know, many a times people's assets have been frozen, and then in the end, it gets, you know, given back to them, and it creates all sorts of damage. I mean, until we know exactly what is going on, at this stage, when they freeze someone's asset, general impression is that person must have done something wrong, or there's money in that person's account that is really, you know, cannot be reconciled with what he does or what he has done. So I hope they know what they're doing. I hope that, you know, it just wouldn't be that, oh, we have decided. We've seen incidents where people's assets have been taken, whether it's car or whatever, and then later it comes back and say, we realize that the car or whatever belongs to that person. But the damage has already been done. You know, it doesn't matter how many times you apologize or what you do to apologize. So I think we need to be careful. But as I said, due process, probably no more than I do. But I don't think just due process should be that when you are investigating somebody, you freeze the asset. But I wouldn't want to think that, you know, that is what has happened.
You want to say something?
I was saying due process is due process. And there's such a thing as malicious prosecution. If you believe you have not been treated well, you can sue the government itself. You know, these things, they are not palatable. You don't want to be in that situation. So what he says is that he hopes they know what they are doing. Here's my view. We should get to the point where our security agencies are very fast to deal with public officials over whom there is prima facie evidence, okay? And then we citizens or the public officials must be in the place where they can swiftly sue the government back if it is found that they were prosecuted maliciously or that the process was not properly followed, etc. If you understand what I mean. Yeah. We should never have a situation where we think that somebody is being protected. And we should also never have a situation where we feel the strong arm of the government is being used in such a way that nobody can get redress. I want these two things, where people who are suspected, even in office, that's why we are crying and we've been crying for the independent prosecutor. We will go after them. You know what, look, public office is said that if you don't have a certain temperament, don't go there. But if you go there, you must expect that you are constantly being scrutinized because you are having to manage poor people's money. Okay, it's a position of trust and it can be abused, you know, endlessly. So small thing, they are on you. But then they must also know that indeed, if you prosecute somebody maliciously or you act in such a way that it's not due process, then you can be sued. Today in our law, if a policeman arrests you or accosts you or does anything against you, and you can prove that he did it maliciously, the law says you will sue the policeman himself personally. That is the law. And I want to see more of that happen so that you have a situation where we go to sleep and we sleep because we know they are watching. And people also know that, well, they are not going to come after me frivolously because if they do, then you are going to have a jackpot because you can sue the government, get good compensation, and then life will move on. So due process is due process. And there are supervisors over that too. The courts are all there. In fact, he can even go to court on this order. He can. get a lawyer and say, well, this is
In
prosecution.
order to freeze his account.
You can challenge anything. The judges are the supervisors of the democracy. So let us all appreciate that these things are good, okay? Because you don't have them, and then you have vagabonds, and I don't want to mention names, but you have bandits running around and trying to enforce law. All right. So due process is due process.
So what do you know about this Opuni case?
Has Mr. Opuni complained?
Publicly, no.
Yeah, so what's the big deal? Has Section 33 of Act 804 been violated?
No.
So what's the big deal? Let's wait. Let's wait for the outcome of the investigations. And this is not new. It's happened many times. I can give you names across the political divide. After 2001, 2009, and today. Unless somebody brings something of evidential value that points to political persecution and not due process, it's no big deal. Let's wait and see what happens.
Some say Mr. Opuni himself should have seen this coming. With all the turmoil
I don't want to go in there. You see,
that was happening before he left.
For instance, the reference to the workers'
Yes.
team, this all this, then creates a certain perception or impression that may be preemptive of the findings of the investigations, and then it may be suggestive that somebody thinks that nailed this man because he had done something wrong. I would rather avoid that. Let the investigations proceed and let's see what happens. I haven't heard him complaining. So perhaps he knows his due process and he has to subject himself to due process.
And